Welcome, everyone, to Awaken Your Inner Genius. So thrilled to be back here with you all here today. We have three of our panelists with us. We have Jim Porter, Karen Elkins, and Ken Pearson. And we are thrilled for the lesson today. Lots to cover, lots to discuss. We had all of our materials together. So much to share with you here this evening. And it's really fun for me to be back in this chair. I listened in last week and it was quite a joy. And we'll talk about celebrating all of our journey together. But why don't we start with just a moment of reflection and centrate and tune into the universal heartbeat of the ocean and just become centered in this moment. You can keep your eyes open, you can close them, whatever you prefer. But tune in to the 1-2 beat of that universal heartbeat of knowing there's so much to be learned right here from our in-breath and our out-breath. Center yourself in this moment. Relax into the sound. Mostly find yourself right here in your heart. May you radiate love. Find that love centered right there in your heart. Tapping into the larger collective love. Tapping into self-love. Tapping into the love for what we'll be discussing today. Take 3 more deep in-breaths and out-breaths. Become very centered in your body. Inviting in the joy of being here in this physical vessel for this lifetime at this moment of creation. When you are ready, feel free to open your eyes. So why don't we start with the very first quote for those of you that are new. This quote is really the center. And Jim, if you would please read this. This particular quote is the centerpiece really of why we do this show.
Mediocrity is self-inflicted and genius is self-bestowed. Walter Russell.
Very powerful quote here, and wanted to remind everybody, Ken, if you would read the next nugget here.
If you can read and count to 9, you can master the secrets of the universe.
Well, and do notice that all of our broadcasts start with a countdown from 9 for a very specific reason. Nothing we do is accidental. So remember this, very, very important. And I wanted to remind everybody that we actually, our core group of students here that came together, we wanted to focus on the man who tapped. And so trying to get this in the hands of so many people, that was our focus, is to the power of this small little book. And our focus also was, out of all the materials that came from Walter and Lao Russell, was the home study course, 12 units. And what we are right now is still in, take a look at February. Here we are at the end of February. We are at the end of Unit 9, as you will see here on the screen. And we're going to take this unit, actually, as you'll see it in just a moment there, we're going to take this unit into March 2nd. March gifted us with an extra Sunday, so we wanted to spend time on the students' questions next week. And please be prepared to come in for questions and with questions. So hello, everyone. So glad you are with us. Wanted to mention something right quick before we dive in, is we have exciting things coming there on the screen. Just a few things. Please know that we have reached our 3,000 watch hours. How exciting is that? So we want to say a big thank you to all of you. We reached the subscribers we need, the watch hours we need to very soon offer t-shirts like this one and some journals and other products that will be coming, and that is all due to you. We also have a website that we'll be sharing with you very soon that'll have all the information about everything that we're doing, as well as some blogs, keeping things in the current with what's happening out there in the world. And James, our watch hours actually led to our being able to do something exciting called Supers. And so he's training us all on it. James, what does that look like before we dive into our lesson?
All right, so we've had a few people that have donated very graciously, and I know sometimes it's easier just to do it spur of the moment. So now YouTube actually offers a way to do that. So I'm going to show you really quickly how to support the channel if you are interested. So bear with me just a second and I will pull that up. So if you're watching the live show or if you are watching our 24/7 YouTube channel here, which we always have the ocean, and we'll be adding, as Kim just mentioned, a lot more really cool programming. Down here, if you go to the chat, you'll see a new feature right here with this little $sign. And this is how you can support the channel in a really fun way. So the first way you can do it is something called a super chat, and you can donate anywhere from $1 all the way up to much, much more. And so you would just put your message here, and so excited for tonight. So you would just put your message here, and depending on the amount that you donated, you would have a colored banner here, and you just click buy and send, and then you would have to enter a credit card, and you click buy, and throw that in. Sorry.
That's okay. I know a lot of people have that automatic. So I see the super chats on a lot of YouTube channels, James. So this is like very fun to see how this actually works.
So there we go. There's the first super chat right here. So that will show up on YouTube. If you're watching, you have just seen the first super chat. Well, actually, sorry, that's on this video. So you wouldn't see that on this video right here. But let's go over to the channel so you can see it pop up. Go here to Awaken. And again, it would be this. Let me mute it so that I'm not hearing myself. So here you can see the channel. All right, so click super stickers, and then you'll see a bunch of really cool, fun stickers. It's another fun way to support the channel. Just cute stickers of all sorts of types, anywhere from $2 up to $50, and you just click that, and there you go. And
did I see a way you could flip someone the bird?
Hopefully.
We'll need a whole set of Awaken stickers. So just want to say hello to everybody. Thank you so much, James. That is fun. Hello, Linda. Hello, Dee. Hello, Jerry. Hello, Darcy, Karen. So many of you are here with us. So these are all new things for us. Many of us, John is not able to be with us tonight, but he doesn't even get to YouTube often. So we have to kind of train him on this. So this is all new for us. We're learning and just simply trying to spread the word. And why don't we have a little bit of fun tonight, shall we, panel?
Sounds super duper to me.
All right, so let's have a little bit of fun tonight. So let's go ahead and dive in. Right now, we are here on lesson 35. And so before we begin, I just want to ask the panel, what nugget came to you out of all of this? I'll share mine. It was a great reminder of how we see these lessons every single day. And Karen, I know that's going to show up in your video as well. So Jim, what was kind of the overriding nugget from you from lesson 35?
I'm still hung up on the last part of lesson 34. The 7 axioms there. People continuously ask, how can they apply this message to their lives? And I forget the exact pages they're on, but that actually, I was thinking today we ought to actually make a booklet out of that and make it available. The overall lesson 35 on reincarnation is a beautiful way of them stating to us how repetitive the universe is. And that includes our coming and going and everything else too.
All right. Love it. Karen, quick thought from you before I go to Ken. What stood out to you for this lesson?
Well, I went on a deep dive, so it's not so short. I went on a deep dive on the idea of a cube, because I just could not figure out why the cube. And it took me on a journey of a 200-page document that I'm almost done with. And it actually, nature is a cube. And I couldn't figure that out until I actually did a big explore. So when you see the video tonight, you'll see how this is literal, so don't take it minor. And then when I'm done with the book part, I'll put it up so you guys can look at it. But it will take you through all the religions. It will take you to the structure of an atom, how waves actually create it, and how there's no nucleus, and the nucleus is God. So
you actually were inspired. You took what was in lesson 35 and you were inspired to then take it on whatever it is that you were led on. So it was a source of inspiration to you.
It was totally. And I went, it just had so much fun.
Well, and fun is the thing. And Ken, what was the overriding thought for you today? I know we spent the weekend really diving into lesson 35.
Continuity, which is a good theme, I think, as we read this lesson, is to look and see if you could recognize what continuity means in terms of reincarnation and why continuity is so important.
Okay, well then let's dive into the lesson, shall we? And so this is from the home study course. We encourage everybody to get their copy there. I'm going to ask Jim to read, please, on that first page, the highlighted sentence when it's explaining reincarnation from Walter and Lao.
Okay, I want to make one minor correction. Nature is not a cube. Nature is spheric in its presentation. The cube is expanded nature. The cube is stillness. All nature is in motion, and that's spherical. But
Okay.
it is a cube sphere universe. Karen's dead right on that. It is.
Okay, so
Well, we will actually be diving into that a little bit later in the lesson. We've got lots of goodies about how these things all tie together. So stay tuned. Jim,
And we
what's
all-
that highlighted?
Yeah, we all agree
Highlighted-
before we even start these classes that when one of us says something that the other might not agree with, we exchange and we point it out.
Absolutely.
And that applies just as much to everyone else coming back.
actually, Jim, you're right though, because it actually took back to God being the nucleus of the radius, and it was that is spirit. So you're absolutely right, and that was perfect.
I always
it's the lessons that are right. It's right. It's in
Yeah,
this
that's
text
true.
we're reading.
That's
That's what's
true.
right. And we read that matter density turns into all spheres are density and matter, and they come from wave boundary fields. So another good term tonight will be wave boundary fields. About everything is within a wave boundary field because it's beyond the sense range and you can't see it with your eyes.
So I love the fact that the panel has jumped all the way to the end of the lesson here tonight, but that's okay. We have a lot to cover before we get there. I always joke with the students who have been studying the Russell work for a long time that I too want to play Russellian bingo and I want to get the words right. So have a little bit of fun as we go on this learning journey together. So Jim, if you would read that first highlighted sentence, because this is a big deal. This is a big deal for people who might be new to this concept.
Reincarnation is difficult to explain to people of this age because the concept of this age is the unfolding of man. In the unfolding of man are still too primitive for anyone to comprehend many facts of nature which are beyond their limited range of sensing.
Okay. Now, this lesson was pretty large, and so I wanted to ask Ken if we could go ahead towards the top of 684, and you'll see where I have some green highlights and some yellow highlights there. I want to read just the first sentence and then have you take us where you'd like to go. It said, many of the previous lessons were written to build new concepts of nature's workings, what Karen was referring to, which would make this most obvious fact of nature understandable. So take us where you'd like to go, Ken.
Yeah, I would actually drop down there to number one. This is one of my favorite paradigms, I guess, antidote that I quote from Walter about explaining to people why there is no death and that we all see that. And therefore, this is going to illustrate how even though something's not there, we still know it's there, even though we can't see it. And that's why there is no death and what the reincarnation principle and continuity is all about. So consider this thought. Place a glass of water on your garden wall some sunny morning. When you go to see it in the afternoon, that body of water is not there. You do not say that the water is dead. You say it has disappeared, and you know why it has disappeared and where it is. You know that it has but changed its potential from its dense visible condition to its expanded invisible condition. That visible body of water, which occupied 6 cubic inches, has evaporated into a large body of invisible vapors, which now occupy a space of 6,000 cubic inches. You know that even though that body of water has disappeared, it has not ceased to exist. You know that it still has a body, not the same kind of body, not one which you could drink or wash your hands in, but still has a body. It might even become visible as a cloud and disappear again. You never think of it dying, so to speak. That body of water didn't die; it transformed. So you never think of it as ceasing to be, and that's the point for me about why I love the water cup so story. So simple, so simply illustrates how even though I can't see it, but I do know the vapor's there. Even I, with a lack of scientific education, certainly academic science, I know the water's there because I've seen vapors, right? We see mist, we go past that mist in our eyes and we know there's vapors there. So that to me is like, okay, so we transform. Everything is about transformation. And what you can continue to read about in this home study course is about cycles. Everything works in cycles. There are no beginnings and no endings. It's not a created universe, it's a creating. And therefore, that's why it's got to be no gaps. If it's creating, what happens if we get a gap? Imagine the film going, right? And then you're watching the film and you get a gap in that film, you got a blank screen, everything stops. So that's why that continuity thing, there cannot be any death, because there's only life, and there's no evil and no bad, which is what we're learning, because we misinterpret nature sometimes and science as being evil and bad, when it's really the counterpart to whatever action we might have taken, a reaction to an act.
Well, let's pause for a moment. Karen, I'll come to you in just a second. I want to say hello to Deborah and Bruno and Rebecca. So glad to see you all. I found this concept very applicable, and I would encourage anyone that's listening for this lesson or any others to actually put a glass of water out on your deck. Experience this for yourself. And to me, I love the way the Russells bring these things to light, that it begins to make it a little bit less emotional and thinking about life and death, and instead thinking of it almost like the glass of water. Karen?
It just goes back to natural law. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It goes through cycles. It's liquid, solids, and gases, plasma. So there you go. So it's what state is it in? And if it's in a gas, you might not see it unless it's evaporating. But it always comes back down in a cycle.
Well, so I wanted to dive into the language, because that's part of our lessons here. So if you look at the last sentence that Ken was just reading, that paragraph, it says that when the rain fills that empty cup, you can say that it has repeated its condition as water. And then when it again becomes a vapor, you can again say that it's repeated its condition as vapor. That is what polarization and depolarization is. Okay, so I would encourage everyone to become very familiar with those two words, or concentration and decentration mean. So as to me, Jim, as a 3-year student here, I'm newer certainly than you all as 30 and 50 year. But what I like about advancing in the lessons is that the language they used early in the home study course starts to come up more, and they begin to connect the dots at a rate that we can understand them more. That was the purpose, was it not?
Yes, and it's a gentle transition, and if you continue to read through the materials every year, just repeating them, it becomes your language after a while.
Right. Well, and if we skip down to the bottom of that page, Ken, one of my favorite quotes.
I would really love, you know what? I'm sorry, love, but I think we should read what's underlined there, because it really describes the continuity principle.
All right. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, that'd be great.
And that way you can comment. If you totally disregard the thought of repetition of its two opposite conditions and substitute the thought of the eternal continuity of that body of water, what Karen was referring to, which forever appears within the range of your vision, then disappears beyond that range for an interval before it again reappears. You will have taken the first simple step towards the comprehension of the sequential interchange of visible bodies with their invisible counterparts. I want to continue, though, because I was taking us to the end before you comment, Ken.
Okay.
That realization is what we must now impress upon you until you fully realize that each interval of time between the disappearance and reappearance of any body is not a discontinuance of the body. It is merely a blackout of your senses. And here comes my favorite quote. When things disappear from your vision or your hearing, they have not ceased to be. They are not dead. Ken?
Yeah, and it's a good thought is, think about, where does water begin and where does water end? And you realize if you take the whole cycle of the ocean to evaporation, to clouds, to rains, to creeks, to rivers, back into the ocean, you can't say where it begins and where it ends. It's a continuity of different cycles and different forms, but it's the same thing. And then in terms, I love this one here about the blackout of our senses, and it's going to come into it in terms of the mountain range in the next paragraph, so I won't go there right now. But in terms of something else I want to say here, Oh, it's about, that's where we start to live in that difference between the knowing and the unknowing and the intervals that happen. But here, once again, is that continuity thing. It's not a discontinuance. So I'm glad you read that part about not being discontinuous, which is for
Yes.
me, it was so important to see the other half, right? That's what I've always lived in the sense world. So now I'm learning to live in both worlds, the world of cause and then the duality of the world of effect, where duality lies.
So I want to bring up a couple of things that are in the chat box because we have a robust discussion going on. So thank you, everybody. So we have Karen Mahan. So Karen, if you would read what her comment is, her question.
I'm not seeing.
All right,
Jen,
so
you gotta
Karen,
hit the mic or mute your phone when you do
What's
that.
the difference between these bodies and material bodies on 684 paragraph?
first paragraph. Okay. So all right. So we want to go back to the top of 684, James. I love the fact that she asked that, and then we have two other questions, and it says this: many of the previous lessons were written to build new concepts of nature's working that would make this obvious fact of nature understandable. In these lessons, we make it clear that all bodies, whether thought bodies or material bodies, are but light waves. Jim?
Thought bodies are the expanded material body. They are beyond our sense range. Pardon me. Beyond our sense range. And in the Russell chart, or in the scientific charts of today, the first thought body that they see becoming a body would be hydrogen. I think it's hydrogen. They can measure that. Prior to that, they think there are not bodies, but they are expanded thought bodies in the process of compressing into a physical body that our sense range can see. That's the difference.
Okay.
The expanded body is thought. The compressed body is the body that you see.
Thank you. So I'm going to keep us going because we have so much to cover tonight, but we do have two important comments here. Karen, would you read what Darcy has to say?
Where is Darcy? Oh, they've
All right,
got
Darcy.
I'm going back and forth looking. Appearance is just as much illusion as disappearance. When this is understood, no death. There is only the eternal illusion of life and death, the great cosmic play. I think that we're using this. The water is a drop. We go into the drop. We come from the ocean. We spin in literally like a tornado, like an eddy, and that's the wave function that creates the dynamic of who you are and I are in that spin. And then our drop goes back up. But even every drop is polar. It has a dipolar nature. Even a drop of water.
And that is what we're going to dive into step by step, because I'm going to try to keep the panel. You can tell they've been very excited about this lesson. I'm going to try to keep them reined into where we are right now. But I do want to bring up a comment from Kenneth before we continue on to the next page. So Kenneth, we have a new Kenneth here. He says, I'm new here, however, not entirely new to the concept. I look forward to a much deeper understanding as time progresses and I catch up. Thanks for allowing me to be part of this teaching. Kenneth, we're delighted to have you. And as you are new here, so yes, we are in Unit 9, but please know that all the videos from Unit 1 all the way through Unit 9 are available on our YouTube channel. And we have many, many people that are doing both. They join us on Sunday nights as we're inching our way to Unit 12, and then they go back for the others. So a gracious thank you and welcome. Delighted to have you with us. So Ken, let's go ahead if we could, because we are already, believe it or not, just 5 minutes away from our first break. I would like to go down to the bottom of page 685, and I want to read something and have you comment. It says, so we just talked about they've not ceased to be, they're not dead, and it says, together with the above realization, you must fix your consciousness, okay, going down to that next page, that the soul of the disappeared body, we're at the top of 686, thank you, James, that the soul of the disappeared body still is I-S, all caps. And in that soul is the same desire that created the disappeared body. That desire of the soul to unfold the form of an idea will cause it to reappear again, to unfold forever and forever as continuity, which is forever changing but never ceases. All right, so I just need to comment there before I hand it over to the panel, because I have to tell you, coming from the Southern Baptist world, and I was first introduced to the idea of reincarnation, because do you remember that wasn't something that was in the world that I was in. To find, first of all, I didn't believe it. Okay, for 2 years, I ran parallel tracks as a regular believer. And then I also said, well, what if this really was, and we were here to learn all of our lessons. The thought, I had a human moment where it seemed like the path was so long, I almost cried. What do you mean forever and ever? Are you kidding me? I'm going to have to do this forever? So, to someone who might be completely new to this, I just wanted to ask the panel to give us your insight about what a joy that actually is and not a burden.
Well, the joy is the renewal. It's the passing in and out of body. As you go out of one body and you come back in the other, a new body, which you're building by your thoughts as you're in your current body, you're building the next one. And the next one generally, I'm in the male form. My next one most likely not, it's not fixed, but most likely will be in the feminine form. And then back to male, back to feminine. And those memories that you have in your brain in this lifetime, they go with you, but they don't come back with you. When you come back into a body as a child, a baby, those memories are stored and you are a renewed being and you're living a whole new experience. A little example would be, just look at this wheel. Now, the bottom of that wheel, one little tiny section, is touching the ground. That's my lifetime. And then I go beyond, and now let's stay with my lifetime. Now I've expanded beyond and I've got all of this cycle to go through in the spirit before I come back into body. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. One is wars and unexpected death in young people. They tend to reincarnate quickly because they didn't fulfill the desire that they had in body. People who reach my age and get to old age and pass away, they tend to take their time coming back. They rest. But it's that simple cycle. What's touching and compressed is your body, and what is expanded is your total self, your divine.
Right. I love that.
What's a good expression on that too is to realize that you are right now sitting where you're at, the sum total of every thought you've ever had, the feeling you've ever had, and every action you've ever taken, sitting in the chair you're in. You are the sum total. That's so important for me to recognize, because that's why we're always talking about our thought life. This message is going to talk to you, and it's carrying a message about your thought life. Your thoughts create your feelings stimulate your actions. So it's thought, feeling, action, and in that sequence, I can always register how. That's why feelings are important for a barometer of what my thoughts have been, because the average human being has 70,000 thoughts a day. So how many of those are oppressive? How many of those are weighing you down and keeping you stuck in this world? Well, you just realize your soul's eternal. So, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not, the worst thing you could say is it can't get any worse, because it can always get worse. Now, on that term of like, if a life is ended early, or as you get to the ripe old age of Jim over there, it's balance. What I really like about that formula that Jim's talking about is that we live in a universe of balance. It keeps saying it: concentration, decentration, depolarization, polarization. So if you live for 75 years in a bodily form, you're probably going to rest for 75 years in an eternal form. And then you'll have an opportunity to have another body. And if you only exist for 20 years in a bodily form, then the balance would probably be that you would come back and have a new body in 20 years. Remember, so everything always comes back to zero and never leaves zero. That's a hard message to hear, but the more you repeat it, and this is a message of repetition. And the reason it's important is, just like Jim said earlier, is because soon enough it'll start to become your vocabulary, and it'll start to become the way your thoughts harbor and generate. If you look at a tree and think about a tree and realize a tree is 90% air. So Darcy's comment about matter's illusion is absolutely right. I never forget the moment I was up there with my love up at Shenandoah Forest, and we were looking at, it was October, the trees were beautiful, and it was just gorgeous, looked like a canopy of a bed of leaves. And we were talking and contemplating how that was 90% of that was just air. That if we jumped into those trees, odds are we're going to hit the ground. We're not going to get caught in some leaves. It's just air. It's an illusion that seems solid. It's not solid. It's just like Jim was holding up that disc. That disc, if you put a fly on that disc and that fly walks around that disc, it always thinks it's in a new place, because it's just an illusion of motion. So, it is an illusion. Appearance is an illusion, and disappearance is an illusion. They are both illusions. There is no
All right.
Appearance is just what light waves in motion.
So there is so much to cover, and we still have another 15 pages. And so before we take our first break, I want to mention something to everybody. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who puts the comments in the chat. There is much to be learned from all of the students that are in the chat. If you are here studying this each week, then you are part of this whole idea of a Russell student. And so please claim that. And I wanted to say congratulations. I wanted to say thank you. And I wanted to appreciate your courage, express appreciations for your courage. Because as I listened, as I was traveling to my corporate work, the things that I do for my real job, right? This is my fun job. I love coming here on Sunday nights. But what I recognized was that that I had just a genuine deep appreciation for you all, because even myself going through these concepts, I learned so much from especially our seasoned students, and then just the conversation for us all. So for those of you that are new, we take a 3-minute break at every 30 minutes. That is our goal, because these are big concepts. And even with our short time where we do 90 minutes or so, we're still not able to cover everything, which is why we encourage you to get a copy of your own home study course. But for right now, we want you to stand up, get something to drink, stretch a bit, because we have so many other fabulous things to come. See you in 3. We are down to the last 5 seconds. If you'll find your way back to us. As we're waiting for everybody to join us, I do want to mention, sound stops. I do want to mention that I am broadcasting from the Russell Museum in Waynesboro, Virginia. So please, if you want to learn more about Walter Russell, see some of the historical archives, sign up for some of the other events that they have, go to philosophy.org. You have got lots of other opportunities. This group of students has come together to focus primarily on the home study course, because for me, that was one thing that there's so much that it's easy to get overwhelmed. And we don't have the 50 years that Jim has, not at the moment, or the 30 years that Ken has, but we were focusing on the home study course and the gift that it is. So just a quick comment here from Darcy, if you would bring that up, please. And Darcy says this, Ken, if you'll read that quote for us, please.
Balance is love. It is through the extension of love that balance is stimulated. When we have negative thoughts, they are residues of unbalanced thinking or effects of extending the unlovely.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Well said.
Lovely. Nice way to be able to say that. So thank you. And thank you to everybody who continues to spread the word about this channel. We've been hearing from several of you. Feel free to post it on any of your social medias, because we have all of our TikTok viewers, our YouTube viewers, Instagram viewers, and if you know of other audiences that we should reach out to. But what a joy is this for the conversation. So we shall continue here on page 686 for our particular panel. I wanted just to summarize what I was talking about, changing sound bodies, because this was number 2. It's in the middle there. You'll see it yellow highlighted. It says, when the sound ceases, it is not dead. You no longer hear it. But if there is a cliffside up the valley and you've talked loudly enough, your voice will again be heard as it condenses into small waves by impacting against the cliff. And they go on to talk about it. We call it an echo. An echo. Jim, anything you want to say about that before we go down to number 3?
Well, that is an expression, a beautiful example of the compression expansion nature of the universe. That applies to everything, whether you're talking about a solar system or the universe in its entirety. It applies. It is a cycle. It can happen in Dr. Russell's work. He refers to corpuscular units of light coming in and out 186,400 times a second. Each one of those little tiny bits is a complete 9-wave cycle, versus a sun, which is an extreme example, might take billions of years to do the same thing.
All right.
Prop is off next to you now.
So Ken, if we could, I was going to jump down to where I highlighted in green on page 687, and it talks about continuity. Would you jump to that sentence in the green and then jump down to the yellow? There are a few key concepts on that page.
Okay, sentence in the green. There you go. If these facts are true to natural law, we are not correct when we use the terms death, birth, disappearance, repetition, reappearance, or reincarnation. How can we be correct in the use of such terms when we know that there is a continuity of such bodies, and that nothing has changed in them but their dimension and their polarity? Is that where you stop?
You'll skip down to the one in yellow. They all tie together.
Okay. All bodies are the result of desire of mind to create bodies. Desire of mind is eternal. Therefore, all bodies are eternal in their continuity. Isn't that?
Pause there for a moment before you describe that there, because I wanted to encourage everybody to place this in the chat box. Desire of mind. Notice that desire and mind are both capitalized, and the Russells were very purposeful about the capitalization. Desire of mind is eternal. So see if you can remember that particular phrase. And Ken, if you'll discuss that a little bit, and I'll ask Jim to chime in.
Well, desire of mind is the cause of our duality, of the world that we live in. It comes from desire of mind to express itself, which is love, right? Christ said it 2,000 years ago. God is love and light. Light is what we just got done talking about, and what Darcy said, that it's an appearance, but it's not real. It's just an appearance. It's a mirror. It's a reflection. Love is the desire force within each and every one of us, and is the reason why we have creation. It's from the expression of love. Thus, the ultimate feeling in the world that I live in is the feeling of love, of touching love, of feeling, even seeing love expressed to somebody else makes me extremely happy. Learning in my life from the world that I came from to embrace love and realize that love is something that I need to become familiar with, and that I need to exert myself into what does love mean to me? How is, what are the boundaries of love? Like, love is something you give. It's not something you get. And you're always re-given that which you give. So if you want love, give love. It's kind of funny because relationships are like that. If you
Well, and so when on that page, what was really curious to me, because someone, I think we get hung up on the word reincarnation because it has the RE at the front of it. So I want to just pause for a moment for anyone who might find this new, because they go on to say we should not even say if they're eternally repetitive, for repetition is suggestive of discontinuous intervals between each repetition. And I'm going to just jump down. It says, when night comes, we no longer see the distant mountain. Okay, so think about the last time that you've seen a mountain. Our range of vision does not permit us to see through the dark. In the morning, the mountains reappear within our range of vision. But we do not think of it as another mountain reborn, nor do we think of it as repetition. We think of it as continuity, for the mountain has never ceased. The same is true of a rose. So, Jim, I thought that was really important for us to pause for a moment. And I really do think that if we don't like the word reincarnation, we can, in fact, reframe it, because that's been our human attempt to describe this very complex knowing.
Yeah. Repeat. You could use the word repeat, regenerated, returned. It's cyclic. It goes. Well, their example with the mountains is excellent, because I live in the Shenandoah Valley and I have a beautiful view off my front porch. And on misty mornings, when I walk outside, you can't see the mountains. They're just not there. So if I was suddenly transported to that porch from out of nowhere and I'm sitting on the porch, I would tell, and you called me up, say, how are the mountains this morning? I'd say, what mountains? It's not until that mist lift that I see the mountains. So yeah, it's the illusions of the world that we live in that not only make it wonderful and fascinating, but also make it confusing.
Right. Well, and that's what I found so powerful about this concept. So I'm going to dive down here towards the bottom of page 688, and I'm going to bring up a few things. And I'd like to go through the first two postulates and then ask the panel to comment, because the most difficult thing about facilitating this lesson, many of these lessons, is that there's so many places. I mean, we could be on for hours and hours and hours. So it says we explain reversal of potential and cycles. So postulate number 1, all bodies are continuous. They never cease. Postulate number 2, all bodies are expressed in cycles. A cycle is a continuous two-way spiral journey from the expanded condition of a body to its opposite compressed condition and back again to its expanded condition. A most familiar example of a cycle is day and night. Each is the opposite half of the other, such as one's breathing. So that's what we've been referring to. So Jim, that little spiral beside you really is an example of postulate 2, isn't it?
Yes, the actual little battery-powered thing up here that spins in one direction only creates the illusion of duality. And that's exactly what we're doing here, living in that beautiful illusion of duality.
All right.
And keep in mind that they're pointing out beautifully there that consciousness never ceases to be. You are conscious while in body. You are conscious while what we would call out of body. But your consciousness is eternal. Your bodies are repetitive.
Yeah.
So I want to jump down to the top of 689. And Ken, I'm going to ask you to talk about that first paragraph, because this, as a new student for me, this understanding of the oak tree was incredibly powerful for me.
Sure. Instead of the glass of water, let us substitute an oak tree. It does not evaporate in order to disappear. It decays by heat, and decay is just another word of exactly the same thing, but with a different connotation. Both demonstrate nature's manner of disappearing by expanding. The element of time also makes it difficult to see both effects as one. The water returns quickly. It may rain the next moment, but the oak tree, which has disappeared, will not stand there again as the tree you saw for 50 years. Now comes the question. where the water is after it disappeared, and where the oak is, that is equivalent to the old seemingly unanswerable question, where do I go when I die?
Well, and let's skip down to the bottom of that page because they continue the conversation right there where I have it yellow highlighted. And they said, did the oak die? Did it go anywhere after it died? Do you go anywhere when you die each night to rest or at the end of a life cycle to rest? And I had to chuckle because how many times have we said, oh, did you sleep? Oh, and we say, oh, I died last night.
Yep. Or go to sleep afraid you're not gonna wake up. You never go to sleep thinking, I wonder if I'm gonna wake up, right? You never hit a light switch wondering if it's gonna turn on, but that bulb could be.
All right, he went mute on me. Can you all hear him?
Nope.
No.
That sleeping, I think, is a great.
Okay.
That was me.
Okay. So I wanted to
Could
go
you hear
down to
me?
the top. We
Part of
can
it.
now, but we lost you for part of that. So at the top of 690, I thought this was interesting because this was a really new concept for me, and I know for many others that first learned this. It says, in the same sense, how do you know that the child playing in your neighbor's garden is not your own grandmother or even your daughter? When you know more about the oneness of man, you will more clearly comprehend the possibility of such a happening. So, Jim,
I can
you
give an
lived a minute
example
ago.
on that. Yeah, I actually had lived an example of that.
Okay.
One night,
If
You
you
can't
could
hear me?
comment on that and even share some of the conversations you and Leo had about this.
well, I don't recall any direct conversations that Leigh and I had about it. We talked about all those subjects, but the one that jumps out to me is when I was my youngest son was 3.5 to 4, and we were visiting a friend at a farm, and I had walked over to the barn with him. And over at the barn, we found a small wagon. So he asked me to pull him in the wagon. So I put my little near 4-year-old in the wagon, and I'm pulling him back away from the barn to the house. And he looks up at me and he says, Dad. I said, what? He says, I remember the last time when I was the dad and you were the little boy, and I pulled you in the wagon. Now, this is out of the mouth of a 4-year-old. So yes, it's repetitive.
Well, if we look back, I think many of us would have moments where people and children have said things to us. I know early on, my daughter actually would start to almost speak to me as if she was a mother. And I found out years later that she and I had multiple times when switching roles.
And most of us have had that. Yes.
Yeah, we even chuckle about that now of saying, whose turn is it going to be next time?
Yeah, I was reading
A great example of that. Sorry, Jim. A great example of that is taking the 20-year-old young person that lost their life, and that they would come back in 20 years, so they can, in fact, be your daughter or your grandmother or whatever. Yeah. So it's a very interesting dynamic in that there is no death, but you never know who you're talking to. So be careful what you say and what you think, because you could be talking to your mother or your father or your daughter or your son at any given time. You never know who you're around.
Yes.
And, one of the things. One last thing on the Russells talk about is, when we talk about reincarnation, it doesn't mean we come back and know that our name is John Smith and I lived in this town and I lived in this. Those are not necessary details to come back and be reincarnated with. But having an innate talent for music or arts or things like that, you'll find that we have a disposition towards things. Well, that's your soul pattern. That's what they talk about with that soul pattern and why it's eternal and there is no gaps.
All right, Jim, you want to?
No, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to bring this up. We have a comment here. Darcy says, the love of the one for creation is extended to all creatures equally. From that perspective, everyone is a relative. A lot of wisdom to that, Darcy. And what I found with learning that this was learning the natural law and the science behind some of this is it freed me up from the self-imposed constraints that I'd placed on myself as a regular human. So hear me for a moment. I had to think about how much fear I have lived through in my life and how that stopped me from so many things. And if I really understood, because, remember, I was worried about I was going to go to hell. I was saved multiple times because I was pretty convinced once wasn't enough and that I had to make sure that I was not going to be going to hell. So this idea of fear that was planted in me early on, when I began to learn that there was this broadened understanding of existence, it was a great relief to think, wow, I don't have to be so fearful and so scared in this particular reality, because there is so much more. Does that resonate with the panel?
Yes, and the creator, the universal one, does not create hells. We do.
Right.
We can create hells on earth because of things that we've done in previous incarnations and the current one, because they're going to be reflected back to us. But no, the universal one is always
Right.
open. It's like literally the prodigal son returning home, or daughter, and the universal one loves and accepts us and celebrates our return.
I actually was very, very good at creating my own hell. And so let me just ask everybody who's listening before Ken chimes in. Have you ever been an unknowing participant in creating your own hell? Because that is what I did finally learn, as I was the creator of my own hell. Ken?
Fear is a boogeyman. It's not real. Every fear, if you follow it, leads to death. That's how you know these little fears that we have. Well, I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that. Follow that fear all the way through, and you realize you'll end in death. So it's not real, because how often have you had a moment where you think, I'm going to die right now? Right? I don't have a bunch of those. I guess when a guy was pointing a gun at me, I felt like I might die, but I didn't think I was going to die. No, I'm just kidding. But the bottom line is that, fear is only, if I took all my fears, that was what I contemplated one day with God, of like, what are these fears and what are they doing for me? And then are they real? And they're not real, because every fear I've ever followed leads to death. And I encourage you to do that. It kind of freed me from that fear of like, what am I afraid of? I'm not going to die right now. That isn't what's on the cards right now. Hey.
All right, so talking to the pets on the side. So a couple of thoughts for us as we're moving towards our next break. We're not there yet, but I wanted to bring up a couple of things for the panel. And so I'm at the bottom here, page 690. And it says, we think of life as beginning at birth and ending in death. We have not yet learned to think of it as a continuity, such as the cycle of a piston stroke in an expansion-contraction engine. Yet one is as continuous as the other. At middle life, our generative power reverses. We then begin to die just as we began to live. I always tell my daughter, do your endings as well as your beginnings.
Can you hold on one second? There's a piano going on in the background. Is there a reason why there's piano music in the background?
There's no piano on this end.
Not at this end.
Not here.
So we might, James had some sound issues earlier, so maybe the internet's trying to give us all a bit of a hard time. All right, so as we continue, it goes down to the bottom here, and it goes, I want to go back to the middle of page 691, so if you'll scroll down.
Thank you, James.
It says that nature balances all of her divided cycles and talks about if the visible, this is what Jim was referring to. So if you have your own copy of the home study course, which we really encourage you all to have, you're going to want to star this paragraph, because this is what Jim was referring to earlier. It says that that if the visible body disappears at 20 years of age, it means that only the whole life cycle is shortened. The invisible half of the body shortens its rest period to balance the shortening of the work period. The youth who is killed reincarnates sooner than he otherwise would. So that's where Jim was referring to. We're doing all we can to help you make connections between different things that come up in the home study course, and always tell you where it's coming from.
Keep in mind real briefly, the baby boom, that's my generation, that happened after World War II. That happened around the world. Populations multiplied at an incredible rate because so many millions of people had been taken out of body during that time period, and they died young, and they were quick to return.
Yes. So what's interesting is if we go on down to the top of 692, I'm trying to get us somewhere so we can give the rest of it some. It says that which we wrongly call life and death, these are not two, they are one. They are one. And it goes on to say there in the green brackets, both halves of our bodies eternally live. They never die. There is no death in the universe, anywhere or in anything. God lives. God's universe is a living universe. So can we talk about that for a moment, panel? Ken, if you'll chime in, and then Jim, and I'll ask Karen. God's universe is a living universe.
Yes, meaning that it's sort of like being in a theater. If the movie is not playing, then there's no projection on the screen. So it's a creating, living, everything is alive, and therefore nothing's been created. That's why there's no gaps, and that's why it's eternal continuity, because nothing's been created. It's creating. It's alive, right? It's organic. Everything is alive. and it's alive by the desire to make that expression of eternal love. Now, eternal love is eternal, right? There is no end. So that there's an eternal expression, just like we live in an eternal universe.
So, Jim, before you comment there, I do want to go to a comment. Rita was tying back to something that we said, and she says this. Deborah. Deborah says, sorry, pull up Deborah's comment, James. Deborah says, yes, I chose to stay in a marriage that did not work for 21 years for my daughters, but as it turns out, that was not helpful to them. Deborah, you and I need to have a whole nother conversation. Many of us.
Yeah.
We're all been there, dear one. Totally relate. And Rita says this to Jim. Wow, Jim, I never thought of the baby boomer generation that way. So very interesting. So Jim, you want to chime in, and then Karen, about the fact that God's universe is a living universe. And for those of you that are new, if you've been with us before, the Russells refer to God as universal one, creator, mother, father, God. So the word that you need, but that's what they have come down to there. What does it mean, Jim, that God's universe is a living universe?
Well, because it's eternal. Expanded or compressed, it's an eternal universe going through eternal repetition. The physical universe is as eternal as the expanded God stillness universe. The difference is the physical universe is eternally in repetition. God's universe is eternally at stillness, but both are eternal, and neither one came into or out of existence. It just is, has always been. Now, in my particular case, I've mentioned this before, so I'll keep it short, but I experienced exactly what they were talking about there. When I had the drowning experience when I was 5, and I went out of body right straight to a universal light. And not only was I overwhelmed by the love of that universal light, I was at one with it everywhere. If you can even use the word everywhere there. I was omnipresent and omnipotent, at one with that universal love. And at the same time, I was in an out of body experience because I wasn't fully dead, and I was attached to the body at the bottom of the water, looking through the eyes of that body at the waves and the sunlight on the thing. So I was experiencing cold fear and the process of drowning as I was with the universal one at the same moment. So that's a wonderful experience for me. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and drown yourself. Believe me, it doesn't work out very well. I was lucky.
I just talked about that a few weeks ago, Jim, that the desire to unite with that one light is it simultaneously that idea of the fear of what you lose.
Well, and what we just talked about that in the subject. If you should decide to leave your body early, guess what? You're coming back into a new body early. So you're not getting away from any of it.
And one more thing I want to add to why it's a living universe is because God is omnipresent and omniscient and omnipotent. That means everywhere all the time. God is centering everything, and God is outside of everything. And that's why it's a living universe. God never began or ended. God is.
As are you.
Okay.
As in God in you is. That sensed you. Now there was a little bit of confusion there about light. Remember, we're just reflections. It's just a reflection in a mirror. Nothing has substance in this world of duality. There's no substance to it. It's a reflection in the mirror. In that wave field.
So I'm going to keep us going here because we still have another 9 pages, and we have big concepts, like big Russell concepts with lots of toys. So we will likely run over a little bit tonight, but I did want to mention something to everybody and remind you what the title of the home study course is, because this ties into what we're discussing here. It says Universal Law, Natural Science, and Living Philosophy. So living philosophy. And when I find that people who gravitate towards this work, they love that phrase, living philosophy, because it is alive. That is part of why we're all encouraged to study 1 unit a month and go through 1 unit the whole year. And then the next year start again, because our experience has changed, our consciousness has changed, and we are moving along another, I guess, a level of the spiral. It is a living philosophy. And so, Jim, you as a 30-year student, you have continued to grow and grow and grow and grow because of this concept of the universe as a living universe.
Yes.
You guys do not hear that piano music. I'm hearing Mozart right now. Moonlight Sonata.
I hope that's
on this channel. It's on this channel.
We'll We'll work on that during the break. So Karen will be coming back and we're going to dive there into the bottom of page 693. So to the team, I'm going to keep us going at a pretty good clip. Do know that I think it is really, really important that in this next segment, we get into the cube and the sphere. So stay tuned, everyone. Big concepts coming. See you in 3.
Now the music's going.
Look what you did.
It was James. He's messing with me.
All right, if you'll find your way back. So Darcy is telling Ken that the piano is right behind him. Maybe that's where it's coming from. You never do know. All right, and he does have a piano downstairs, and he would know that. We were having some technical glitches. And so to the panel, I'll ask you to come off mute because the break always puts us on mute. And so I want to mention something before we continue. So this particular unit was a really big unit. They're all big units, and it seems like they get bigger and bigger as we go along. And so please, to everyone who is on these broadcasts with us, if you have any ideas or suggestions or thoughts of what you would like us to do differently, please know that this team gets together every single week. We chat every single week. Everybody is involved with doing things from this every single week. And Karen, even your video tonight at the end of the time is longer than normal because this was such a big lesson. Is that correct?
I wanted to also impact that this is literal, what he's talking about with the cube. So I took a little bit more time, and I also we had the criticism that things didn't go long enough. So now I make everything 12 seconds. I just run it across. So if I normally I could make a few minutes off, but I've allowed you to luxuriate over the images.
Luxuriate, love that. Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead for the panel and bring up a couple of big concepts, because I think it's really important that we land these before we go on to next week. And we have debated, to everyone who's listening, we've debated that maybe there are some of these lessons that need 2 nights. But anyway, to the bottom of page 693, it says, facts of nature which escape us. The soul is the fulcrum from which the polarized lever of motion extends to manifest a polarized body. All bodies are divided, therefore all bodies are polarized. A polarized body means a body which is divided into 2 seemingly separate male and female parts. Okay, so as we go into that next sentence, though,
Honey, where you at? I don't know where you're at.
So we're at the top of page 693. Go up a little bit, James. We're at the top of page 693. I'm going to continue. It says, so a body which is divided into 2 seemingly separate male and female parts because of the 2 opposite conditions which cause seeming separateness. So saying that the male-female bodies seemingly separate, that the whole universal body is polarized into mate pairs. It is also multiplied into compressed light waves of matter, which you see, and into expanded waves, which you cannot see. So on to this next sentence, I want to just mention a couple of things because there's so much to cover here. A good example of a polarized body is a storage battery. So if we had a battery, we'd hold it up. When it is being charged with a light current, it is compressing. When it is being discharged, it is expanding. So I often get these words confused, and so I wanted to slow our audience down. To compress is to polarize. So Jim, what does that mean? Is that us coming from light into a body? We're polarized because we're being compressed.
It's seeking to charge the 2 poles of the male female within us to manifest embodiment. That charging factor increase is in constant increase until we reach about the age of 45 for most humans. After that, it's in constant decrease. So that's the discharge. That's the expansion side of it.
Well, then it says
picture that.
To expand is to depolarize. So from what I understand, you're saying that when we come into a human body, we're compressing, and that's polarizing, bringing in the male and female, and up until around 45. And then the rest of the time we're beginning to expand, which is that depolarization. Is that why our waistline expands with it?
Yes. Well, your every cell in your body is oblating after 45. Up until then, it was moving towards sphere. Now it's moving away from sphere. So yes, you expand. If you look at women, when you're walking around in your day-to-day, look at young men and young girls, and their body types look almost identical. Then they reach puberty. Now the males start to square up, and the females start to get curved. As we get older, watch those males. They start to get curved, and we females start to get square. It's a fascinating.
Females, huh? Right there, we females. I did. I think I heard it.
Yeah, because we have the
flip there, huh, Jim?
At old age, I assure you, my body is not boxed and cubed and squared like it was when I was in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. Yeah.
I now have a whole new lens to see the world.
Think of your cell phone. When you charge your cell phone, you're polarizing it. And when you unplug it, when you run it throughout the day, you are depolarizing your cell phone. Okay, when you plug it in, you're compressing it, and when you unplug it, you're decompressing it.
Yeah, we even use that term. My cell phone is dead. Well, it was never alive in the first place, but yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to jump down to the middle of page 695 because we've got to get into this cube sphere conversation in order for us to land it. Please know if you have your own home study course, there's so much more to cover. So, Ken, if you could read that underlined sentence when it's after it says God creates only one form.
What page?
So we're on page 695.
695.
In the middle.
God creates. Okay. Simplest of all stories?
No, in the electrically divided universe. 695, middle.
I'll tell you what. Oh, 95. I'm sorry, my bad.
695.
God creates. God creates. In the middle. First paragraph, second paragraph, love?
The sentence that's underlined, it starts with in the electrically divided universe.
It's got the green star by it, Ken.
In the electric.
I'll read it. Never mind. In the electrically divided
You don't
universe,
have to
there's
underline. It's already underlined.
in the electrically divided universe, there is but one divided form of one divided body. And that one simple form is the cube sphere. So for those of you that are new, you're going to want to star this because this is really, really important. The sphere is the visible compressed half of one polarized body. The cube is the invisible other expanded half, which divides and insulates hot spheres by the static zeros of cold space. All right, so Jim, I'm going to come over here with our cube and our sphere, and I would like you to start to explain this, and then Ken to add in, because this is important. Go ahead, Jim.
Well,
So,
I don't see anything.
So describe. Okay. Just go ahead and start talking. I'm getting there as fast as I can.
Okay, that the cube is the expanded universe. That's the stillness. There are no waves there. It is the fulcrum. It is the universal one. Is the eternal, unchanging universal presence. That's the cube. That's the perfect expansion of nature as God.
Okay, keep going.
I think the cube is a good, Jim's on a good point there. And so if you think about measurements, right, the measurements are in cubic inches. The reason for that is a cube is the maximum space that anything can occupy before it explodes. So it's the most efficient use of space. That's why you measure things in cubic inches. And it also is representative of perfect matehood in the elements of matter. Sodium chloride, which is table salt, is actually when it bonds, when you bond sodium and chloride, if you were to separate the two and just had sodium sitting on that table with you, you would die. But you put sodium and chloride together and you get table salt. You look at a grain of salt, every grain of salt is a perfect cube. And that's why it's representative, why Christ said, be the salt of the earth, was not just about being the flavor, but also representing perfect matehood, perfect union, perfect efficiency, how to coexist with other people, is to be the salt of the earth, to be the solid rock, to be the solid.
So let's keep it simple. And so this is the feminine side of nature, is it not, Jim?
No. That is the still fulcrum from which all matter appears. It has it's not feminine or masculine. It's divine. It's eternal. It's universal. It's forever. Feminine and masculine only exist in body expression.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then go on. I want to explain this paragraph. So then let's talk about the sphere.
Well, example is I can see your body, but I can't see your soul, your expanded universal self. But I know it's present. Now the sphere. Your sphere there is the opposite, the equal and opposite to the expanded cube. The sphere represents you in perfect body form. This sphere, when it's in perfect body form, is the manifestation, the perfected manifestation of the divine. That's what every living being is seeking to manifest. But by our thoughts, our actions, and our choices, we do not reach that perfection, or when we do, we can't hold it. We go right past it. A Christ-conscious being is exactly what you're holding in your hand. That's the manifested body of perfected God, surrounded by the cube of perfected universality. And that's what.
So you want me to put these two together then?
Yes, together. That is.
Say that sentence again.
That what you're holding, sphere, cube, put together. There's the I and my Father are one. That's what he was telling you. When you reach that state of perfection, you are at one with Creator, and that's the sole purpose of the entire universe, to reach that stage. And every living being will reach it.
What stage are you talking about, Jim?
Christ consciousness, God consciousness, knowing who you are, why you're here, and how to manifest perfectly.
Okay.
Remember, that's the highest stage. Go ahead.
Deborah's making a comment. You want me to read it? It's pretty good. Circumference points to the inner center point. At the same time, the attraction/repulsion dynamics is created as gravity impacts on the mass of the point, causing energy to be pulled from the center. And then she goes on. and says, we will return to this dynamic a bit later into this paper, but now let's add another component, building perspective. The boundary planes of a cube and the center points are the stillness.
Matter only pulls and only pushes, never pulls.
Right.
Okay, so let's just pause for a moment because this is a really big concept that they continue to build on. So anything else?
Can I bring in something, James? Do you have that flat piece of paper that has the cubes in it in the form of a cross?
We have that image. We'll have the team pull it up right now because that is pertinent to what we're discussing. So
Yeah,
team,
so
you'll pull up the cross image.
That'll be important. It'll be a lot easier to explain of why, guys, we're talking about cubes and spheres. Plus, remember this. There are only two shapes in the universe, and it's a cube and a sphere. Everything else is a derivative, an offshoot of the cube and the sphere. Those are the two natural shapes of the universe. Those two shapes right there are the two natural shapes. So everything else is a fractal, as Karen would say.
So the team is pulling up that image. We sent it to them earlier. James or Joey, if you could comment about when that's coming up. So that Ken can go ahead and begin to describe.
You could draw it on a piece of paper, love.
I can. I'll go ahead and do that while we're working on it. Go ahead.
All right, let me do this real quick. Remember the statement from the Russell teachings. I am within all things, centering them, and without all things, controlling them. But I am not the things I center and control.
Nice.
Okay. So now what Kimberly, my love, is drawing there is a cross, right? Now what space does and what God does to create matter is that they're flat zero planes, they're 90-degree planes of zero curvature. And they fold in on themselves. And if you look at that cross and you fold up all those little flaps, you could see where it would make a cube. That's what space does. God's desire creates those zero planes of curvature to create the cube. Once the cube is created, it's a one-way mirror. And within that mirror is the matter starts to reflect itself off of those mirrors to create a sphere in the center on the equatorial line of the breadth, width, and depth, which you can't see, but that doesn't matter. The point of this is that this is space. Think of this as planes of space and how God creates matter. Go ahead and fold that up, love. Just bend them together. Bend the sides together to show how.
I'm working on it, dear. I'm being as ingenious as I can possibly be in the moment.
Just the sides. Yeah, you don't have to do all that, love. That's good. That's how God does it right there. There's zero planes of curvature. So imagine those are planes of space. But now they're mirrors. And what they become is they become one-way mirrors. And then within those one-way mirrors, once those mirrors have created the cube, now what happens is in the breadth, depth, and width, there's three more planes on the inside. That now on that equatorial plane is desire. Desire is manifested by a sphere. And in that sphere is the male and the female, as Jim would say, the north and the south and the equatorial plane. The bottom line is to imagine space. It's like, how does God create matter? Now you just saw how it brings itself together in space. Those are called 90-degree planes of zero curvature mirrors. Once those take form, the centering starts to oscillate, which then gyroscopes and starts to create matter.
Okay. All right.
Karen? Okay. People have to know that those are how most of the cathedrals are built, because that is man unfolding with his arms and his head and his legs.
Yes, it is.
Into his consciousness. And it is a resonant chamber. So when you go into a church and the top part is where the domes are, is where you can see the cosmos and the cosmic body of which you're supposed to align and quote unquote alter your mind at the altar to become in a resonant field with it.
So I want to say to everybody who's watching this, please know that this team spends an enormous amount of time about how we can take these complex things and bring them to life. So can we get points for Kimberly's attempt to put Post-it notes together? Okay, because that was not the plan.
Bravo, my love, bravo.
I'm just having some playful fun here because as we continue through this home study course, what I kept being told when I first came in here and I was visiting the museum, which I encourage anyone to come visit the Russell Museum in Waynesboro, Virginia. I kept hearing from God that creation was child's play. Creation was child's play. And I've never forgotten the beauty of that, of the fact that think about how children delight in playing. This is how the creator delights in playing. And this is how each one of us can delight in playing and creating once we really understand what all of this is in creation. So
Kim, could you show the cube thing that,
all right.
that
So James, if you could please bring up the video, and Jim, if you'll describe what we're seeing here. James, it's bringing
So as you look into that, you realize you see the potential multiplicity that goes on into an infinite possibility, infinite illusion of depth and height and width. Yet we know that on a flat plane, they do not exist. It's only when you have the mirrors reflecting off each other, you get the illusion of that endless multiplicity. And that's why this little cube thing is such a fun little thing to have around. It reminds you.
How many lights are in there, Jim?
I believe there's only one in each corner. There's 8 in the corner, and then the center one that you see reflected is actually the divine center, and it's not even there. It just appears there.
So if you were to take this analogy and go into them building this box, so Jim, I know you've built them before, and you actually make the cube and you put a light in each corner. Those few lights create infinite number of lights and worlds that you're seeing. And when I've actually looked in the cube, what happens is if you look to the corners, it literally looks like the light is curving, but there's nothing curved in the entire box. So that's part of what's so powerful. And this is another reason why you want to come visit the Russell Museum, because they have all these cool, fun things here.
And the other thing I point out when you're looking into the box, if you look straight across to where you see the stop sign shape there, when you're looking into that box, if you look at it, you're going to see your own eye looking back at you. That's the grand illusion. You see yourself within that grand illusion of multiplicity, but you are standing outside as a one single mind looking in. The potential, it's a one. My cousin and I and Ken and we've all talked about it before. We want to build a box that we can sit in when we do our meditation.
Yes, someday.
Yeah.
And I have a dream someday of being able to raise enough funds that there'll be a children's museum based on all of this, and Karen will help us create all kinds of cool things. So dream with me. For the panel, though, I do want to jump down to 697, and I would like to read this. What's in the blue circle there in 697. So if you'll go up. Yeah, right there. No matter, because this ties to what we're talking about, no matter where you look into nature, whether it be the bark, wood, or the leaf of a tree, or a speck of dust on a butterfly's wing, the grass in the meadow, or the deer eating the grass, or your own body of many forms and substances, from the hair on your head to the nails on the ends of your fingers and toes. All of them are composed of cube spheres, which are either completed or on their way to or from the balance point of their maturity at the amplitude reversal point of their octave waves. Of these octave waves, you will hear much in later lessons. In other words, the dual body of the cube sphere is growing to its maturity to express life, just as your body is growing to its maturity to express life, as all bodies in the universe are doing.
That's what wave amplitude means, the peak point of life. That's wave amplitude. That's where all matter reaches its densest form. That's where we reach our densest form, and it's set at 90-degree angles from the equator. That's how you know you've reached maximum potential. And then there's the downhill or the uphill, whether you're going up or you're going down. Remember, it's a wave universe. It's always a wave. It's a corpuscle wave, but it moves in a wave. The corpuscle moves in a wave.
All right, so let me ask the panel. My gut is telling me to have us go ahead and jump ahead to page 700, and I'll share with you why. You can, because what I would like us to do is get to a certain point here at the end of this particular lesson. Have everyone who's watching watch the visual journey that Karen spent so much time pulling together, and then come back and have more Q&A, and that would give the panel some time to look at anything else they think we need to bring up. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, don't we have questions next week?
We have questions. That's what we're
going to do the question and answer segment next week.
Yes.
Right? That's kind of short, so maybe we should leave a few pages so we can wrap this lesson up and then go into question and answer next week and use that whole session for wrapping this up, and so we don't just jump over it. We can jump. I'm not saying don't jump. You're still not going to finish.
Well, listen, there's so much to hear. Darcy brings up this comment. She says, Darcy says, I love the idea of a children's museum. Darcy, let's manifest that together. A strong desire here, right? Okay. So let's go ahead to 700. And Jim, I'm going to ask you, if you would, to please go to the middle of the page and right where it starts, right above where the blue highlight is. Yes, if you'll start with you as the individual unit of creation, if you will read down until the yellow highlight, and then I'm going to ask Ken to read the yellow highlight, please.
You as an individual unit of creation, like every star in the firmament is an individual unit of creation, center your own collective field, which includes the millions of little ones within it and those that take on those you take on as your desire increases in intensity. You as an individual unit of creation are a point of desire in the zero universe of mind. Around that centering point, which is your soul, you create a record of your desire, which is your dual body. It is a wave field measured out for you in the stillness of the unchanging zero universe.
All right. So before we go into Ken, I want to just invite everybody to really hone in on the fact is that you as an individual unit of creation are a point of desire in the zero universe of mind. So as we're thinking about things like a new earth, as we're thinking about what is ahead, as we're beginning to awaken and depolarize and expand, okay, that's part of what I believe the awakening of humanity is about, is the expansion of, we feel so compressed in these bodies. That's part of why we so desire to get out. I'm speaking for myself. Get me out, because I feel like it's so much more, right? But if we all understood the power of our point of desire to literally change the world that we're living in, to me, that's profound. And I don't want us to blow past that, because aside from the science, aside from all the terms, you can study these things for a lifetime. But for me, when we're talking about awakening the genius, awakening your inner genius, it's understanding that you have the power to change the world, your world, as well as the world that we're living in. And I really want to invite everybody to pause for a moment and claim that. Let us not blow past that very, very important point.
Yeah, what you're saying there is really great, love, in that, remember that you are that zero point of desire, but every thought, feeling, and action you've ever had, and how many lives you've lived, are recorded in the space that surrounds that 0 point.
Yes.
Which is its cubic wave field that separates every other element in the universe, is that cubic wave field. Just like in your body, your red blood cells and white blood cells are all separated by a cube wave field boundary. Otherwise, they'd collide into each other and just become one big blob, and we would just coagulate and we would never exist, right? So what keeps atoms from bumping into each other, or neutrons or protons and those elements from colliding into each other, is that wave field boundary, that cube wave field boundary. And that used to collect all my thoughts, feelings, and actions of all the lives that I've had. You don't get away with anything. It sticks with you like glue for eternity, right? So when you take an action, remember that action you take, your whole life depends on it. And that's how important every moment is, and why you are a point of desire, and why Kimberly said, when you recognize yourself as a point of desire, you realize not only can you change the universe, you are the universe, as Jim said. You are God.
Wow.
You are Christ-like.
So let that sink in. You are the universe. So why don't you go ahead and place that in the chat box? I am the universe. I am the universe. We don't do this just for fun every Sunday night, although it really is great fun. I missed you all terribly last week. We do this because we are on a quest to awaken the inner genius and to influence humanity in a way that can change things around. And Jim, that was one thing that Leo would say to you all, is that was part of what drove them, was to change the future outcome of humanity. Was it not?
Yes, and she was adamant in pointing out that we're in the 11th hour of that transition. And that there will be those that choose not to transition, expand upward in knowledge and awakening, which is perfectly okay. They will choose to stay where they are. Some will even go down in frequency.
Sure.
It's not a punishment. It's a desire fulfilled. Those that seek things of body desires will receive what they thought and desired, body desires, until they seek that no longer and seek to find that divine within.
So part of what's happening is that we have so many people that are saying, oh my goodness, we're coming to the end of the world, game over. I would say with this new knowledge, game on.
Yes.
Game on. We can take our power and we can completely begin to reimagine the universe with these principles. And so, Ken, I wanted to have you just read this yellow section because you always talk about, thus you become what you think. If you could continue from that section on.
Thus you become what you think. The measure of your wave field is the measure of the intensity of your desire. The pattern of the body you create in it is a record of your desires. Your body is the record of the sum total of the desires you have expressed in the millions of years of your unfolding. You never lose that patterned record of your desire, which is your body. You always have your body. Your senses lose awareness of it during your death period, just as they do when you sleep. But your conscious soul never loses awareness of it. Desire in your consciousness recalls it, reassembles it part by part in the pattern of age-long desire, just as desire of soul, which centers the seed of an oak, reassembles the oak tree in its own pattern. Leaf by leaf, its wood, its bark, its strength, and its majesty of form. Majesty of form. Go, love. Now you can go.
You know, that's one of the things that I loved about the Russell work is that they take these very big concepts and then they make it simple. So the next time you're on a walk and you see an acorn, understand that you are living a piece of the Russell science there in the acorn. You cannot see the oak tree in the acorn, yet you know it is there. So that is tapping into your knowing self, not just your sense self, because just as they go on to continue to say, if you look at a seed of a flower at the bottom of 700, you cannot find the flower and any part of it. Even with the finest microscope, you cannot see any indication of the leaf or color or stem, which will assemble itself around and extend from that seed. And what's in green highlighted here is important. Nothing material is in that seed. It belongs to the zero universe of mind desire. And so last thing I'll read here is what's in that yellow line. The body of the oak is not in its seed, but the idea of it is there. God is there. God, the creator, who has desired to manifest that part of the whole idea of creation at that point of desire, which centers the seed of the oak. Where then is the body of the oak? Wow.
Look at that little acorn you had. There's a 40-foot tree in there. I just know it.
Let me jump in here for just a second. Let me share something with you. I walk in nature almost daily, and I love it. And I always look for examples of what we're talking about in nature. Right up the road from me, not a quarter mile away, alongside of the road, there's a massive hollow stump of an oak tree. I mean, it's got to be 4 to 5 feet around. And right in the center of that dead stump is an oak tree, a new one growing right out of the center of it. It's about 6 foot tall. So you talk about a perfect example of what was fulfilled in the seed, right, and went into what we would call that. And now it's being regenerated within that very tree's core. It's fascinating to watch. I'll get a picture of it and share it with you.
Please do that. So we have a lot more to mention and a couple of announcements, but it is time for our visual journey, the gift of desire that Karen gives us. Karen?
No, I just love this last thing. For behold, I am within all things, centering them, and I am without all things, controlling them.
Page 702 at the very, very end. That comes from the Divine Iliad. So right there. Yes. So Karen, let's see what gift you brought to the group tonight. Love your passion and love your inspiration. For everyone else, sit back, make a note. If you have some questions, we'll come back to answer any questions and have a few announcements for you. Let's dive in. Another amazing experience. And Karen, wow, you were on a roll this time. So a gracious thank you, Karen, if you'll come off mute. And just want you to know how much everybody's appreciating you in the chat box. Any thoughts before we finish up here?
Hopefully they all kind of get the idea of we do evolve from that still point, from the God center spirit, Jim, as he says, within those wave boundaries that spiral out to create the geometry and the things who we are. So I think it's a nice way of kind of showing it. And when I get the book, I'll let you know, because it's 200 pages. Every tradition has the cube. I have not found one that does not.
Beautiful. Well, a gracious thank you, Karen. Karen, as always, so especially being that this is the first time that she's going through the home study course, even though she's been familiar and studied the Russell work over the past over a decade, she's going along. And Karen, I think you resonate with some of the new students who are saying, how do I make sense to the words that are on the page, to the bigger concepts? And I believe that's what inspires you each week.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
All right. So I want to thank everyone. We have a couple of announcements here as we go forward. And before we show, we have a student spotlight here tonight, and want to just mention to you. So let's go to that right quick. Karen, Bonnie, let's go ahead and bring up Bonnie's comment right quick. She says something about Karen before I go into the student spotlight. So Bonnie says, Karen, the fact that you know this and can visualize everything to come up with these videos blows my mind. You must have just the yummiest stuff running through your creative brain. Thank you.
Well, you have to know I've done 15 years of Science to Sage magazine. I've interviewed over 400 people in the magazine. I've done lots of interviews. So I have a breadth of work of multiple people who actually, all this work, when you know it's right, it comes together as a symphony. So it's 15 years of Science to Sage magazine.
Well, and that's actually what I loved about the Russell work. I want to ask Ken and Jim to comment, because to me, what happened is that the Russell work did for me what happens to us when we buy a car, and then all of a sudden everybody else on the street has the same car. And you're like, what? When did that happen? When did everybody buy this car? The Russell work brought things to my awareness. It became like a cosmic scavenger hunt. But all of a sudden, these things were everywhere. Were they not, Jim?
Yes. Yes.
Ken?
Yes, I agree.
They're done. They're done. They're like, no, I have nothing more for you, Kim. Finish up. All right. Student spotlight. Just before we finish up, wanted to remind everybody that we brought this up to you before, but I had some conversations with Elaine, who is actually working with 12 Habits for All of Us. So please check out her website, 12habitsforallofus.org. Send her positive vibes as she's working on making a really important book. We also mentioned to you about another woman who is investing a great deal of time in this content, who is on our broadcast conversation. And if she's got a new website that you definitely want to check out, you'll see that on the next page. And that is, if you'll see it, it says 12monthsofharmonybooks.com. And not only can you find all about her, you also can find, as you'll see on the next slide, you'll see some art prints that she's doing, and a fabulous book collection set that she has pulled together. We are working right now to help Dee go to some conferences that are coming up. So if you are interested in donating toward that, please make sure and note that, because she's out there trying to get the Russell work in children's books and into the hands of those in education. And as we wrap up here, we've had conversations about this book, The Man Who Tapped the Secrets. And I want to invite you to just dream with us. I personally have this dream, as you'll see on the next page, is to place the man who tapped into the hands of 1 million people. Hint, hint, you see that I have a bigger word there, but I'm going to say million so we don't overwhelm ourselves, right? So, and if you can be part of that, I'm absolutely convinced, and Elaine's convinced, as you'll see on the next slide, she's beginning to wonder if we couldn't even find a way to be able to do that through the Rotaries. So we'll never know about that, but please continue.
Hon, your microphone is dipping just a little bit, just so you know, it's dipping.
Okay, I'll come over here. So as we finish up here, so thank you, James, very much. Just want to wrap it up here, and please continue to go ahead and commit. If we'll come back to the panel, go ahead and commit to getting your own copy of the home study course. You can learn more And you'll see that below. For those of you who want to come visit the Russell Museum, they've got some events. You can go to philosophy.org, look at the events tab in their store, and you'll see some great events that are coming up there, including a concert at the end of this week. And they do have monthly meetings where you can talk to other people. So as we continue to grow the Awaken Your Inner Genius, we can't thank you enough. Please send us your ideas. We'll drop our email into the chat box, and we're not going to say goodbye. We're going to say until next time. Next Sunday is Q&A as we wrap up Unit 9, and we will make our way into Unit 10. Only 2 weeks to daylight savings time. May we all celebrate that. See you next Sunday.